I lost my biological parents a few months ago in a shooting. I had 6 bullets put in me, a fully automatic AR-15. I know it's a rather dry way to describe what happened. People look at me like I'm some kind of a freak. Why are you so neutral about this? Your parents are fucking dead, you psycho? I don't know. Plain as that. The story began in October of 2020, October 15th, if I remember correctly, just a day after the shooting. Due to my uncle's alcohol addiction, I had to go to a foster family. Let's just say I wasn't happy. Ugh, why can't I just stay with Uncle Jason? The social workers had come to cart me off. One of them said to me, "He is an alcoholic and not a good influence." This pissed me off and still does. Anyway, back on track. I was given to the Evans, a rich couple that became infertile, Bill and Kayla Evans. They've always wanted a son, so they took me on. Things admittedly went great for the first few weeks. They loved and cherished me like their own flesh and blood, so I showed them that same love. But on week 3, things took a weird turn. Bill came up to me one day. His face was pulled into a grin. The crinkle in his eyes said all I needed to know. "Nathan, we have some exciting news for you." His voice was sing-song, like the jingle of one of those old toothpaste commercials you'd hear back in the 2000s. Kayla carried the rhythm. "There's a party set up specifically to truly induct you into our family. However, we don't just mean the family we are in, we mean the entire family." Whenever I think about what happened that night, my body readies itself for something that it can't fully articulate, like a shadow in the corner of the room. A student walks into a food court with a heavy duffel bag. Countless nights have passed, and I can't sleep. Seconds stretch into minutes, minutes into hours, hours into centuries. The subtle discoloration of my bedroom ceiling burned into the back of my eyes, damp shaped like darkened eyes scraping away at me. Slowly but surely, my mind slips. Eyes that feel like they're being weighed down by a lead boulder, burning and sore. That warm cafeteria enters into me every time. The subtle glisten glow of slightly sticky tile and years of soda and coffee stains is something that no amount of bleach can't clean. The Fresnel reflection on the tables, the laughter, the smell of fresh buns, hot dogs, and potatoes being fried, and the slightly off-putting smell of grease and gas. A shadow kicks down the door. I can't remember anything else of what happened. I shouldn't feel guilty. I am the victim here. Despite that, the specters of place bore into me from the nth dimensions, just out of sight. If they were here, they would hate me. I can't sleep. The simple act of closing my eyes is a screeching, screaming mess of sound. The foul odor of rotting meat, a dead squirrel on the side of the road, the cold slime of blood trickling down my arm, lights clawing its way through the thin skin of my eye. All I can see is red. I miss you, Ma. I know this might be selfish of me, but I just need to tell someone about what happened. Simply looking at them makes me freeze up. I slam shut my ears, the pressure of my hands on my ears clamping down like a vice, pressing down on them as if to silence the maw of a great beast wailing in pain. But the sound doesn't stop, like a gunshot to the lungs. My breath hitches at their presence. These people are just like that monster. Bright overshirts and cheery smiles can't hide it. What happened that day leaves me short of breath, clutching at my stomach curled into a little ball like an armadillo. It's almost pathetic. We arrived, and I, being my introverted self, remained quiet. All eyes were on me, and it gave me chills. Dark eyes eating me their eyes, predatory. I'm getting off topic. They all know about me being the only fucking survivor of the shooting. Of course, I'm now some miracle child. But I gave a wave and the noise resumed. Bill and Kayla felt the need to introduce me to Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. Why were they there? Even the Rockefeller family and the royal family were there. I was excited, obviously, because I was at a party with famous people who were admiring me, which made me feel special. I know, I'm a class traitor. The punk in me wants to gut each of them like the pigs they are, but, well, I don't know, okay. Wouldn't you be excited? After maybe 2 or 3 hours of surprisingly normal and casual conversation, they did the most fucked up thing imaginable. They brought a 9-year-old boy out, shaking and his weight being thrown between each leg, threatening to topple over at the slightest bit of force. He was deformed beyond recognition. Please let me go. Fluid building in his throat, words bubbling out, the voice hoarse and whisperings, low and breathy shaking, catching in his throat like trying to pull against the grain of a ziplock. In a single word, terrified. He sounded so weak and in so much pain. And what does Bill do? He fucking slashes the kid's face off. He then turned to me. Drink the blood, Nathan. What the fuck did you do? They saw the fucking disgust and utter horror in my eyes. Drink the blood now. No, I'm not drinking that kid's blood. What the fuck is wrong with you? Bill's eyes are dark and disappointed, his brows and eyelids weighing down, demanding of me. He didn't need to say it. You had one fucking job. I told you he isn't ready. But you didn't listen, did you? I'll take him home. Bill, he's seen enough. I haven't spoken to either since. I have a feeling I'm next. I read a study once where psychologists took a group of students who tested on the same level and split them into 2 classes. One class was told they were advanced and were challenged and praised for their intelligence. The other class was told they were remedial and were given easier tasks and criticized for their failings. At the end of the study, they retested the students and found the advanced group scored higher than they had coming in, while the remedial group scored lower. Ethical issues aside, the study proved that perception affected reality. Students fit into the negative and positive molds they were subjected to. I learned about this study in college when I took an early childhood education elective, hoping it would help me become a good foster parent. That study turned out to be more relevant than I could ever have imagined when I welcomed my first child into my home. Her name was Alexis, and she had a sister, Oakley. In a sort of bastardized parallel to the study, Oakley was raised being told she was descended from angels and doted on, while Alexis was told she was the daughter of demons and left to rot. I won't go into any details beyond telling you Alexis was locked in a basement until the day her sister slipped up at school and revealed her existence to a teacher. The teacher contacted the authorities, Alexis was rescued, the parents were arrested, and the children were put into foster care. The sisters were like day and night. Oakley was a plump little blonde-haired girl with a big bright smile and a happy spirit, and Alexis was a gaunt, barely communicative recluse who scowled and snarled at everyone. When the social worker told me Alexis's story, I offered to take her in. I was determined to give her all the love and attention she deserved. What can I say? I was full of blind optimism and desperately wanted to help a little girl who'd gone through hell. I signed the papers and was told to wait in the hall while they brought her out. As soon as I left the office, I found her sitting on the bench, legs swinging. She looked downright feral with her head of matted brown hair, yellowed teeth, and tattered clothes. "Alexis?" I asked softly. We locked eyes, and she stared at me with the desperate stare of a shelter cat. I held out my hand, she took it, and I brought her home. I quickly became disenchanted with my foster care fantasy. I'd imagined mentoring, emotional breakthroughs, and deep conversations about life, all things I'd wanted when I was on the Alexis, despite being a sweet child, exhibited increasingly unsettling behavior. She'd carve demonic symbols on the walls and speak in an unknown tongue. One night, I woke to the sound of furniture being dragged across her room. When I investigated, every piece of furniture had been moved, seemingly by an invisible force. Then, my kitchen knives vanished. No matter what I tried, I couldn't find them. This wasn't just misbehavior. It was a disturbing display of power and control. It felt like something sinister was growing within her, something I couldn't control. Another night, I woke up to her standing over me, her dark eyes reflecting the faintest glimmer of the streetlight outside, making her look even more owl-like. "What's wrong, Alexis?" I asked, as I twisted around to turn on the bedside lamp. "Did you have a bad dream?" I was ready to pull her into bed and comfort her, but when I turned back around, she was gone. No footsteps, no squeal of a door opening and closing. She was just gone. I got out of bed and checked up on her, but she was fast asleep. One morning, I woke to a cold bedroom. There was something muggy in the air, making it hard to breathe, and my sheets were uncomfortably damp. I opened my eyes to the dark room and swung my legs over the edge of the bed. As my feet touched the ground, I felt wetness. I remember thinking, blood. I imagined a pool of it beneath my feet, trickling out from a dead, mutilated animal stuffed under my bed. Thankfully, there was no such thing. I think that's when I realized Alexis's conditioning was so intense that it was transferring onto me, making me think the most ridiculous thoughts. I flicked the lights on, and though there was no blood in my room, there was something just as strange. My entire bedroom was covered in dew. Yes, like on grass in the morning. It was everywhere. The walls, the ceiling, the curtains. It peppered my dresser and overtook my mirror. I have no idea how it happened. My windows were closed and my heating was on, so I have no idea how all that humidity accumulated in my room. I spent the day cleaning up and running fans to prevent mold. After that, I had nightmares almost every night. I'd dream of waking up and seeing Alexis's owl-like eyes watching down at me from the ceiling, from the walls, from under the bed, and from the very back of my closet. I knew it was wrong to let her tragic past influence me, but I felt some relief in knowing that's all it was. We were both normal students, told we were in a remedial classroom. I just had to keep telling myself that there was nothing wrong. Even when the dreams became so vivid, they bled into my waking life. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to use the restroom and feel her presence behind me, or her breath in my ear, or catch a glimpse of her running down the hall when I knew damn well she was fast asleep. God damn it, we were normal. I wasn't going to let myself be poured into her negative mold. I was here to reshape her, not the other way around. One of the creepiest things to me was what you see in every horror movie involving kids, her drawings. It was never anything quite as unsettling as, say, demonic faces scrawled across all the pages of a notebook, or an axe murder scene, or anything like that. But every time she drew herself into a picture, she drew a kind of dark halo around her body. It wasn't threatening or anything, but it spoke volumes about how she perceived herself, you know? I think that was the true horror to me, knowing that even months later, her parents still had such a huge negative impact on how she viewed herself. After months of unconditional love, she still saw herself as a monster. She still snarled at strangers. She still lashed out at me if I tried talking to her. She still moved all manner of furniture at night. She still mumbled in that incomprehensible tongue. Last night, as I sat in bed thinking about what to try next to help her, I had an idea. This little girl had lost everything. She'd been uprooted from her life, lost her home, as bad as that home was, her parents, her sister. And that got me thinking. Maybe I could arrange a play date with her sister. Maybe seeing a familiar face would make her feel better. Which brings us to today. I contacted the agency this morning. I introduced myself and asked about Alexis's sister, Oakley. I intended to start with small talk and ease into my request. I asked how Oakley was, but I got a cold reception from the woman on the phone. She asked me why I wanted to know, and I was really put off by the brash tone in her voice. I explained I'd been fostering her sister and was wondering if they could meet up. I explained I thought it would be good for Alexis to be around her sister a bit, provided the other foster family was okay with the reunion. There was a long silence on the line before I heard drawers opening and closing, followed by the shuffling of papers. "Sorry, who did you say you were again?" she asked. I let out a nervous laugh. There was something off in the tone of her voice, something that wove my vocal cords and esophagus into a tight braid. I shakily gave her my name again. Papers shuffled. She asked me to repeat. I did. "We?" She seemed hesitant, as though unsure whether she could tell me, but she did. "You left before we gave you Alexis. We thought you changed your mind. She's with a different family." What she said next was a blur as my mind raced to understand. Had I taken the wrong child? But then, what about all the weird happenings around my house? In a haze, I asked who I was fostering and was told I didn't have a foster child. I protested, but she checked, and all the foster kids were accounted for. I don't know who or what is sleeping in Alexis's bedroom right now. The psychologist study never mentioned there was a third room. They made a difference to him as a child, and they are making a difference to his life as a working adult. He finishes by describing how very grateful he is from the bottom of his heart for everything that Banya has done for him. Tom grew up in foster care as part of the Banya family. Today, he tells us his story. Tom was born to parents who unfortunately were unable to care for him as they were both alcoholics. When drunk, his father became abusive towards his mother. There were times when his mom was so hungover or drunk that she was unable to get up to prepare food, and Tom would resort to eating toothpaste. This was the sort of life that he was experiencing during his early years. Tom still considers himself to be one of the more fortunate children from abusive families, as there are many children out there who suffer the abuse targeted at them directly, be it physical, emotional, or sexual. But it's an environment that everyone will agree no child should have to grow up in, and was very traumatic for the young Tom. Tom lived with his birth parents until he was 7 years old. Until that point, social workers had often visited the house trying to help the family and keep them as a unit. But as the abuse continued, it became obvious that this was just not going to be possible. One night, Tom was taken from his family. The police broke down the door, and he was driven away by the social workers and taken to who he remembers as being a very nice lady. So began the first night, one of the most critical nights of any child entering into the care system. Tom was terrified. He didn't know what was happening and didn't know who these people were. But he had to trust his social worker, who he had got to know over the many home visits. One of his overriding memories is that she bought him a pack of football cards, which he was collecting at the time. To this day, Tom still keeps the completed book of those cards as a memory of the start of his foster care journey. After the first couple of nights in the emergency foster placement, Tom was moved to another placement, which was still only short-term. This family had 2 other foster children, and though they were extremely welcoming and able to understand Tom's situation, it was still very confusing and scary for the young boy. Here, he stayed for 2 months. During this time, the one place that Tom did feel safe was at school. It was the one and only thing that was consistent in his life. After 2 months, Tom's auntie and uncle collected him, and it was explained that he was going to live with them. Tom was elated, overjoyed. These were people that he loved, knew, and trusted. He was able to continue to visit his parents, who reassured him that it had all been a mistake. They had done nothing wrong, and everything would be resolved. As a child, of course, he believed them. Why wouldn't he? He was a kid, and they were his parents. After nearly 2 years of living with his aunt, Tom's social worker took him to meet a lovely couple called Leslie and Mark. They chatted, got to know each other, and he recalls they took him for KFC. Eventually, after a couple of weeks of meetings, Tom was moved to live with Leslie and Mark, his new foster parents and part of the Banya family. His new home was outside of London, so along came another big wrench. It involved leaving behind his school, all his friends, and the area with which he was familiar. The date is imprinted on his memory, 25th November 2007, and he was 9 years old. Even though he was now slightly older, Tom still didn't really understand what was going on. But his Banya foster parents had been well trained. The first thing that Mark did was to sit down with him, with his file, which was the size of a telephone directory. Together they went through it page by page, and Mark explained all the reasons for why Tom was with them, his own history, his parents' history, why he was in care, everything. It was a highly emotional experience. Hearing the truth laid out was very unsettling. Discovering that the people that you trusted and loved are the reason you have been taken away is very disturbing. For the first few weeks, while everything was so new, Tom behaved and was the perfect foster placement. But then he started acting up, and he himself admits his behavior became quite challenging. Now he understands that this was not necessarily a bad sign. It meant that he felt sufficiently cared for and supported to let these emotions out. Mark and Leslie knew this. They spent many, many nights, for hours and hours, talking and helping Tom to understand why he was feeling the way he was, and discussing how he could demonstrate his emotions in a more constructive way. There were many times during those first couple of years that Banya's social workers were involved helping Leslie and Mark through this difficult period and helping them to provide Tom with the support and guidance he needed to rebuild his life. By the time Tom was 14 to 15 years old, things began to get easier. He was beginning to mature and realized that despite his best efforts, his parents were not going to get better. This was a milestone in his development. He stopped focusing on his parents and a desire to help them and started to focus on himself. Now 24, Tom still lives with Mark and Leslie and refers to them as Mum and Dad because this is what they have become. They have looked out for him, helped him, and supported him the entire way. He loves them dearly. Tom is giving back and working with Banya, the extended family that raised him. He is helping to recruit foster careers who will be able to help children like himself. He loves Banya for what they have helped him achieve. Tom is now a well-rounded individual with no hang-ups from his tumultuous start in life. He is honest and open about his past and keen to share his experience to help others. His admiration and depth of feeling for Banya is obvious. He is not shy about declaring that they have gone above and beyond to make sure that at every step of the process he knew he was loved and cared for. And they are still doing that now.